My dad, who's a good old army man, told me in the army, there are no good or bad soldiers. There are only good or bad generals.
So I'm so happy to have my good friend Bharat Puri with me in this conversation. And in keeping with the theme of 60 not out, I am dressed up in my cricket hat and with my new ball. Bharat, I know, is more of a tennis player than a cricketer. But my relationship with Bharat goes back to more than 30 years when he was my client at Asian Paints. And since then, not only has he become a friend, but Alka and Nilima have become close friends. And even more amazing is that our children have become close friends.
The fascinating thing is that, if you speak to Alka, not only does she consider you and Nilima obviously great friends, but she also considers Shravan and Shambhavi as great and has an independent relationship with the two of them, which is exclusive of you, which is fascinating.
It truly is. It truly is.
I very graphically, Vijay, remember our first meeting.
I see.
Our first meeting was, here were, these young marketing boys who had been put into marketing after like years in sales. And fortunately, we had the sense to say, okay, listen, we may have all these flashy degrees, but let's now learn how actually marketing stroke advertising happens in the real world. So you had very kindly agreed to organize it, let's call it a training program stroke familiarization program.
Yes.
For us at Ogilvy. And I graphically remember your first this thing where you started, and it's I think it was 87. So it is now 34 years back. You started with a quote from The Hidden Persuaders.
Yes.
And then a quote from Mani Iyer's daughter about advertising.
Yes.
And what struck me then, Vijay, was your sincerity and passion for the subject. The second thing was very clearly, this was a solid, citizen who said it the way it is. He tells it like it is. And 30 some years that we've known each other, that has been one of the bedrocks, because with you, what the wonderful thing is, you're Mr. Solid, you're Mr. Reliable. Once you say something, it will get done, and you will go to the ends of the earth to get it done. And the second thing is, you do things with a passion that is rare, with a sincerity that is rare. Even when you were like, in the thick of Ogilvy, you were a fellow who made your point of view known very nicely. But it was, you made it clear you were on the same side, but you had an independent opinion. And that's something I've always respected. That essential part of you has always been something that has really endured and has always, attracted. That here is this guy who will tell it like it is, unvarnished. And of course, in all of this, characterized by that beautiful, wonderful, hearty laugh. My second memory, which also in a way embodies you, is after you had your whole cancer piece, etc. We met in Cadbury House.
Yes.
And we were like, wondering how, and the resilience that you showed in reinventing yourself, there was no bitterness. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind that you would have been a very senior person in advertising had you continued with an advertising career. And senior, I mean, not in an India context, but in an international context. But the resilience that you showed in reinventing yourself without any bitterness and, in a sense, embracing your second life, I think it was a life lesson for me. It was just wonderful to see that here's this man who's been through so much, but that hearty laugh still remains, and he's come to terms and is communicating very clearly where he wants to go from there.
The memory I want to share is when we were working together and we did something at that time which was extremely innovative and really quite remarkable, I feel, which is that in order to strengthen the client agency relationship and understanding further, we decided to depute one person from my team to the marketing department of Asian Paints and one person from your team, that was Karthik, deputed to Ogilvy to be in my team and actually work on Asian Paints, right? So from our side, it was Shwetal, and from your side, it was Karthik. And what was fascinating for me was that when I broached this subject to you, I knew that I could make it happen within the agency, because agency is not a very hierarchical place. I had to go to Mr. Iyer and persuade him, कि ऐसे मुझे try करना है, is it okay? And I knew that it would happen. But Asian Paints is not necessarily like that. And you literally took less than 24 hours to come back and say, I thought it's a great idea and we are ready to proceed with it. I've noticed that in your long and illustrious career as a marketing person, as a marketing director, as a business head, as a CEO, now as a group CEO, you've always had these incredible client agency relationships. You got amazing work at Asian Paints, you got amazing work at Cadbury's, you got amazing work at Pidilite, right? What is it?
My dad, who's a good old army man, told me, never make the mistake of believing that, the soldiers are bad. It is only the generals that are good or bad. The good generals are liked by both above and below.
Yes.
And the bad generals lick above and kick below.
Ah, beautiful.
And the second thing he said is, listen, whatever you do, when you put your head in the pillow, make sure that you can sleep in 5 minutes. The simple principle, Vijay, I have followed always is, I have truly always believed that the agency and us are one team. Everybody likes to say this, but I have at least hopefully practiced it most of the time.
Yes.
I remember in Asian Paints, there was this tradition that, the agencies were not given sales figures. They were not taken to sales conferences. I said, listen, how can you do this? These guys are partners. They have to go. I still remember, of course, I took you to Goa where you did your, Mera Juta Hai Japani.
Yes. And you also took me to Khajuraho.
Yes.
I remember that conference as well. You mentioned about licking above and kicking below. There was a time when I was upset in my early days in Ogilvy at not getting promoted with some of the others.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was ready for a promotion, but I didn't get it. And so because Mani Iyer was my direct boss on some accounts, one day when we were traveling or something like that, I asked him, I said, why was I not promoted? And he said, your time will come. But then he told me something which has registered in me like a lightning bolt. He said, there are two ways to grow in an organization. One is to be pulled up by your seniors, and the other is to be pushed up by your juniors.
Nice.
And he said, most people spend their effort focusing on the first and not focusing on the second. And if I were you, the fastest way to get promoted is to be pushed up by your juniors. So you develop them and you create a succession plan, and lo and behold, you will get promoted.
The question I have for you is, we've had a wonderful and long relationship. From your perspective, what makes it tick?
At the surface level, as you said, we feel extremely comfortable with each other. And we feel extremely comfortable opening up to each other. And as you know, we have enjoyed each other's hospitality in multiple cities and countries and homes and so on. But the most cherished times that we have had together has been when it's just the four of us. The second thing is that I feel that all four of us obviously have a professional track and we do our work and all that. But I think somewhere within us, there is a urge or an impetus for personal growth and development. And that when we are together, we somehow seem to help each other take some small steps in that direction of personal growth and development. So there is a personal satisfaction after meeting Bharat and Alka that Nilima and I will always talk in the car that, isn't it nice how good we feel? And somehow this conversation has moved us along and pushed us along in some little way. And I think that perhaps you and Alka also feel the same way. So these are the two reasons that I feel that our connection has not only endured, but grows stronger by the day.
My blessing for you is first and foremost good health. Second is lots of joy and happiness. And I always feel, Vijay, that in your case, there is still much more to emerge. I still think there is a Vijay 3.0. The 1.0 was the advertising man, 2.0 was the reinvention. There's going to be a 3.0 who's going to be a different fellow. And I really want to see that blossom, so on and so forth. And, you therefore, in a sense, be even more fulfilled. And the third blessing for you is lots of family joy, lots of grandchildren, and despite your 16 kilos, us sharing lots of good food together. Because, one of the things that also makes our relationship work is our mutual love for good food.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so since I have given up sugar and you mentioned grandchildren, I can say to you, tumhare muh mein ghee shakkar. Let that happen. Let that happen as soon as possible.